After 6 decades of searching for her birth father, one DNA report and the internet did the unbelievable for her. But before we start, please give the video a like and make sure to subscribe to Wonderbot and hit the bell so you'll never miss any uploads from us. Every day is a new one. One never knows what the upcoming day is bringing for us. But we as humans only believe and hope that good will come to us. However, not each day is a bright sunny day. There are days which cover up the sky with dark gray clouds as well. Christine was a resident of Kansas who had a tough childhood. First, she was brought up by a single mother, and with her growing responsibilities, her single mother also put her up for adoption. Christine's childhood was not something a normal child has. It wasn't a peaceful one. Growing up under different parents had deeply impacted her, and this impact compels her to find her biological father. Since the last 57 years, she's been searching for him, totally unaware of the fact that how mysterious a figure her father was. DNA is not a new term for us. Probably all of us have heard that a DNA test is being conducted to find the true identity and relationship between humans. Even the shows like that of Maury or Jerry Springer use the scientific test to find the father. When Christine realized that she could use this medical test to find the long-lost missing piece of the puzzle of her life, she did not think of what all repercussions it will have when the reports would surface. Christine Kiefer, who herself is now a mother, now understands how challenging the phase of parenthood is. Running behind your kids for meals and then working hard for fulfilling all their demands makes it even tough. And as she herself is experiencing it, she can realize how distressing it must have been for her mother to put her beloved daughter for adoption. After her single mother had left her, Christine was brought up in Kansas. Living life as a baby without the presence of her mother beside her had affected her emotional stability. Though she always knew that her mother had left her to a new family so they could provide Christine with a better life, still deep down in her heart she'd always yearned for her mother. And then she takes a decision. Christine always wondered that why her birth father left her and her mother. She trusted her mother's step of giving her up to be adopted for her daughter's safe and better future. But she wanted to know the story behind her father's call as well. Will she ever be able to decode the hidden past? Or will the revelations take her to an even darker secret? As her mother was not by her side, locating her father was a tough thing. Christine only knew her father's first name and nothing else. The only thing she could do was Google the name, and as expected, these search results provided her a long list with the persons naming the same. Finding him got even more complicated. When she least expected it, a message changed her life in seconds. Almost 57 years after Christine was adopted, she receives a message from an unknown woman. While she was curious to figure out who the woman was, the woman further questions Christine about her past that she herself had been trying to figure out for her whole life. What the message was and who was that woman? Christine Kiefer was born in a small town of Kansas in the year 1960. Her mother Donna, though, was happy to hear the news. She was quite depressed at the same moment. Donna worked as a waitress in a local cafe, and with the little amount of money she received as a salary, bringing up a child would be a strenuous task. However, she gives birth to her and let God decide her newborn's fate. Donna tried her best to provide Christine the life she deserved. Only after a month of rest after she was born, Donna resumed to her work. But as Christine grew, her expenses for education, clothing manifold. Even the house where the mother and daughter lived grew short to shelter the growing family. Then Donna took one of the harshest decisions of her life. When Donna had to dive into a severe financial crunch, she knew that she'd have to give over Christine. And if she kept on raising her in such a situation, she'd not be able to give the little girl the life she deserved. She decides to offer Christine for adoption. However, Christine's grandparents intervened right then. Christine's grandparents were strictly against the decision that Donna made. They could not accept that their granddaughter be brought up in someone else's family while she already had one. The baby girl never saw her father, and devoiding her of mother's love as well would be too cruel a thing to do. But as Donna was adamant, the grandparents had to think on their feet. The grandparents decided to adopt their grandchild and gave her their name. They legally adopted her. For the elderly couple, it was totally unacceptable to see their grandchild being brought up by a stranger, even when they were alive. Christine then resided with her grandparents while Donna went back to her routine life. Christine had a luxurious life at her grandparents' place. She was provided the life that was the best for her. While Christine missed Donna, Donna never took any interest in her life. With all such ups and downs in her life, there was one nagging question in Christine's head. Where's my father? While Christine had a stable life, once she was taken care of at her grandparents' place, she always thought that why didn't her father set up a plate for her? Why he didn't wish to raise her up? Was he having any sort of hatred towards her or her mother? Embracing all these thoughts, Christine grew up into a woman from a girl when she undertook the task of locating her father. Christine was later married and was settled in her life. With growing family and responsibilities, she left her childhood behind. She was now a mother looking after her own family. But the space in her heart that belonged to her biological father always remained empty. She then knew the only place where she could find her father's full name or more was her birth certificate, and she stepped ahead. Christine always thought that finding someone was really tedious when one didn't know even a single thing about them. And things get even worse when one doesn't even know the name of the person they're trying to find. For 57 long years, she'd been grieving over her birth father. Will the birth certificate provide her the answers to the mysterious father, or will it be something terrible? With just one aim in her mind, to get some whereabouts of her father, his true identity, Christine travels all the way to her local town in Kansas. She visits the hospital she was born in. As it was against the laws of the hospital policy to fetch any information about the patient to anyone, Christine had to put in a lot of effort to get her records. And when she got it, she was completely shocked at the revelation. How was this possible? Christine could not believe what she read. The piece of paper she had her hopes attached to fetched her an answer, but the answer was too unbelievable. She had never thought that after coming so close to the hidden mystery, she'll find this in the answer. All she had to say was, how can this be the name under the father's name title? Christine had all her hopes attached to this birth certificate, but sadly the piece of paper from her past disappointed her. The blank in front of the tab reading father's name only read two words, unknown father. The discovery broke her heart. All she said was, is it this difficult to locate my father? Tears ran down her cheek, and on her way back to home, she got an idea that would potentially help solve the mystery. Christine thought of herself as a fool on realizing that the easiest way to locate her father was no other than her grandparents. They would definitely be knowing about him. She was hopeful that as her grandparents were the only one who was there with her when everyone else left, they would help her find her birth father. Would they provide her the missing information from her family tree? Christine visited her grandparents' place with high hopes. She was quite optimistic about everything. She greets them and immediately shoots the question about her father. Though the old couple was initially taken aback, they then told her the only thing they knew was he was a resident of Pennsylvania. But again, this was not enough to find this mysterious man. And then came a shocking revelation. Christine soon started to feel lost when she realized with such little piece of information she could not locate her father. While her details that her grandparents furnished her, she got hopeful, but her hopes were now taking the shape of hopelessness and helplessness. She did not know what to do next, and then a woman enters her life. Christine decided to move on in life. She was putting her best foot forward to find contentment in her life. But the poor child of the Lord could not. Her mother, she had no clues to her father. All this just tore her apart. For a child to know the basics of his or her existence, their parents, is the most important thing. And then Christine learned about a website via the woman that will bring turmoil in her life. One of Christine's friends introduced her to a website named Ancestry.com. The website used DNA samples. It was an attempt to help people locate and trace their family via this biological linkage. Christine knew that this was something she had to give a try. Surprisingly, the long-lost hidden secrets started to unfold. It would have been a week or so that Christine had made a profile over this website. She also submitted her hair sample as a DNA sample. During this phase, all Christine prayed for was to find her father with this. And then she receives an unexpected message from a woman. Who was she? The message that Christine received was from some Cindy Mostrom. She was a resident of Pennsylvania only. Though Christine couldn't recognize her, the woman claimed to be related to her in some way. This disclosure developed an interest in Christine in Cindy's profile, and the duo continued to disclose about each other. Christine recalled that Cindy texted her saying, "Hey, this is Cindy. You are a Weaver. I can say that looking at your DNA." Christine was surprised at the woman's words, as she actually was one. With this statement, the woman developed a trust amongst each other, and then Cindy named their connection. Cindy further studied the DNA links and said that they were cousins, cousin-sister. Christine was overjoyed to hear the news. It was almost after 6 decades that she heard from someone belonging to her own blood. Then Christine asked Cindy about her father, and the cousin-sister could not ignore this important question. Cindy's heart melted hearing the sad tale of her sister. She sobbed, realizing that she left a life like that. She immediately asked Christine for all that she knew about her biological parents so that Cindy could join links on her end and find out something. The disclosure left both cousins stunned. From all the evidence that she got from Christine, she could relate that one of her uncles once used to live in Kansas, and that uncle was her Uncle Dory. Cindy was sure that there are strong possibilities that Christine's father is no other than him. She called him up. With her heart beating fast, Cindy dialed her uncle's number. She knew it was high time that she gets to know about her daughter Christine. As Dory picked up the call, Cindy said, "Uncle Dory, you know I love you. Now, did you ever live in Fort Riley, Kansas?" She eagerly waited for his response. After taking a deep breath, Dory told Cindy that he used to live in Kansas quite really long back. It might be nearly 60 years or so that he would have been residing there. Cindy was now getting excited to ask him the most awaited question. His niece puts up another question from the past in front of him, and this question shocked Dory. Cindy asked him if he ever knew a woman named Donna who used to work at a local cafe back in Kansas. And Dory's response made it all clear. He said he not only knows her, but he also dated her back then. Cindy was completely blown away hearing this statement from her uncle. The father that Christine had been searching for was actually her Uncle Dory. Finally, Christine will be able to know who her father was, and luckily she'll be able to get all the answers to her questions. Cindy asked her uncle to hold back his breath and heart, as what she was about to tell her might end up giving him the biggest shock of his life. She told him that he has a daughter who'd been searching for him for decades. Dory was totally clueless about this news. Cindy further tells him that the DNA was a 100% match, and he was her father. She even informs him that Donna had given Christine for adoption as she could not provide her a decent life. Dory was shivering. A shiver ran through his body. Dory did not respond for a few minutes. He went silent, trying to absorb the emotional trauma. What all emotions were Dory going through at that moment is something too difficult to be written down in words. Tears ran through their cheeks. He was surprised that Donna never disclosed such an important piece of information about their lives. He was overwhelmed to hear this news, and he wanted to do something good for her. What was this special thing? Now that Dory was aware that he had a daughter, he wanted to fulfill a wish of his long-lost daughter. He said to his niece that he would wish to get his name furnished on her daughter's birth certificate. He even asked Cindy if his daughter would ever call him Dad. Would she? Christine, still somewhere, was waiting for the official reports to confirm that Dory was her father. The man she never heard of, had no clues about, and most importantly, who was not there with her almost all her life, suddenly calling him his dad was a tough thing for her. And when the reports confirmed this assumption to be true, Christine had an emotional turmoil. Christine called Dory. She was anxious and a bit uneasy, as it would be the first time they'd talked to each other. When the duo shared a few words of their longingness for each other, they could not stop talking to each other. They had a lot to say and tell each other. The moment was priceless. And after a few calls, they at last decided to meet. Christine and Dory were connected to each other in an instant. Same blood ran through their veins, and they immediately developed the love and bond amongst a father and a daughter. It was then Dory who told his daughter that they'd be celebrating a family birthday in Pennsylvania in April, and he would love to have Christine there. How exciting and thrilling would their first meet be? Christine fulfilled the desire of getting her father's name published on her birth certificate. And finally, in beautiful words, the blank in front of the title, Father's Name, read Dory Weaver, and not Unknown Father. It was almost April, and it was time for Christine to reunite with her birth father and meet her extended family. Christine, with a fast-beating heart and a nervous body, traveled all the way to Port Matilda, which was nearly 1,160 miles away. The moment she saw Dory, he hugged her tight. How emotional it would have been to meet your birth father after nearly 57 years. Dory's side of the story was no different. He was equally glad to meet Christine. Even her extended family gave her a warm welcome. The old father even gave a nickname to his daughter. Dory called Christine DNA Detective. It was her determination to find her birth father that made them reunite today. The duo decided to forgive the past and look ahead in future. They still have a long way to go and cherish their relationship, though it took almost 6 decades to find the missing piece of the puzzle. Christine finally got so.